Again, this is 48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was very clear and he was very explicit, and he did not back down, not in that Hamptons meeting, which they're all lying about, nor in this text thread. I'm not going to reveal the names of the other.
Charlie Kirk, a young conservative voice who shaped American politics. But now, that voice has been silenced forever. Once a symbol of defiance and energy within America's conservative movement, Kirk built a platform that spoke to millions who felt unheard. His speeches echoed across college campuses, his debates went viral, and his words inspired a generation to question authority and defend free speech. Yet, in a single tragic moment, that powerful voice was cut short. On a quiet evening in Utah, during what was meant to be another rally for hope and revival, the sound of applause turned to screams, and the message he had spent his life spreading was swallowed by chaos. Across the nation, screens flickered with breaking news alerts, supporters wept, and a movement stood in stunned silence, trying to comprehend how one of its loudest voices had been silenced forever. Those few lines would send shockwaves through the conservative movement. In just a handful of words, the private thoughts of Charlie Kirk became a national storm. The leaked messages, simple yet explosive, exposed a hidden tension simmering within America's right-wing circles, the clash between loyalty, money, and conviction. Screenshots spread like wildfire across social media, dissected and debated by journalists, activists, and political rivals alike. Supporters rushed to defend him, insisting he had spoken truth to power, while critics accused him of betrayal and hypocrisy. Within hours, talk shows, podcasts, and news panels were flooded with speculation. Was this a glimpse into the private struggle of a man torn between principle and politics, or the spark that would fracture the conservative movement from within? What began as a quiet group chat among allies had become a national reckoning. And indeed, those few lines would send shockwaves through the conservative movement. Yes, the messages are real. I'm actually glad the truth is out there. I didn't release them publicly because they were part of a private exchange. With those words, Andrew Calvert, the spokesperson for Turning Point USA, broke his silence. Sitting before a dimly lit backdrop in a video later uploaded to YouTube, his tone was steady, careful, yet charged with emotion. The world had been demanding answers since the screenshots surfaced, and now, Calvert was confirming what many had already suspected. His admission rippled across the media landscape, validating the authenticity of the leaked messages that had ignited days of speculation. Viewers could sense the tension behind his calm expression, a man walking the tightrope between transparency and loyalty. The decision not to release the screenshots himself, he explained, wasn't about concealment, but respect for privacy. Still, his words hinted at deeper truths and internal conflicts within the organization. In that moment, his statement became more than just clarification. It was the first official acknowledgement that the controversy surrounding Charlie Kirk's final days was real, raw, and far from over. This was days before his death, when Charlie stood firm on his beliefs. Just a few days before tragedy struck, Charlie Kirk was unwavering, resolute, and unafraid to take a stand that many others would have avoided. He knew the risks that came with challenging powerful interests, yet he refused to bend. In private messages, he spoke candidly about the pressure mounting around him, donors withdrawing, allies questioning, and whispers spreading through the corridors of influence. But to those closest to him, this wasn't new. Charlie had always been defiant in the face of intimidation. His voice carried conviction, even when he was alone in the fight. He saw himself not as a victim of politics, but as a defender of truth, a man willing to lose everything before betraying his principles. None could have known that these words, typed in quiet confidence, would be among his last. This was days before his death, when Charlie stood firm on his beliefs, and then, a single shot changed everything. The crowd was alive with energy, chants, applause, flashing lights, as Charlie Kirk took the stage for what would become his final appearance. Under the open sky of Utah Valley University, thousands had gathered to hear him speak, unaware that history was about to shift in an instant. His voice echoed with confidence, his gestures firm, his message defiant. And then, the sound that no one expected. A single gunshot cut through the air, sharp and final, turning celebration into chaos. Screams replaced cheers. Supporters ducked for cover, phones fell to the ground, and the stage, once a symbol of purpose, became a scene of terror. Security rushed forward, sirens blared in the distance, and the camera feeds capturing the event froze on one haunting frame, Charlie collapsing as the crowd scattered. Within seconds, confusion gave way to horror. What had begun as another rally for freedom ended in silence, and with it, a movement was forever changed. And then, a single shot changed everything. It took 33 hours to find the suspect. But questions still lingered. For more than a day, the nation watched in suspense as authorities launched one of the most intense manhunts in recent memory. Helicopters circled the Utah foothills, police checkpoints appeared on every major road, and news channels ran non-stop coverage filled with speculation and fear. When the suspect, 27-year-old Tyler Robinson, was finally arrested in a quiet rural town, relief swept across the country. Officials called it a swift and successful operation. But beneath the headlines, unease began to grow. Details didn't seem to align, eyewitnesses gave conflicting statements, and the weapon found at the scene didn't match early reports. Surveillance footage went missing, and key documents were sealed without explanation. Online, theories spread like wildfire. Was Tyler really acting alone, or was someone else pulling the strings? Even after the press conferences and the police updates, one truth remained undeniable: it took 33 hours to find the suspect. But questions still lingered. Andrew Calvert. I did share the screenshot with a few people in government. We didn't want to miss any lead. His voice was calm but deliberate, each word weighed carefully during the late-night interview. The admission confirmed what many had suspected, that the private messages linked to Charlie Kirk's final days had reached far beyond Turning Point's inner circle. Calvert's tone carried both duty and unease, revealing a man caught between transparency and the fear of political fallout. Sharing those screenshots, he said, wasn't about stirring controversy, it was about ensuring that nothing, and no one, was overlooked in the investigation. Blake Neff. I was an eyewitness. I've been told not to comment. I don't want to jeopardize the trial. His statement was brief, almost whispered, yet it carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. Neff had been standing just yards from the stage that day, close enough to feel the shockwave of the moment that ended Charlie's life. Reporters pressed him for details, what he saw, what he heard, but Neff refused to elaborate. Legal restrictions, he said. Safety concerns, others whispered. His silence only deepened the mystery. Two voices, two fragments of truth, and between them, a story still shrouded in secrecy. Andrew Calvert. Charlie's views on Israel were complicated. He was struggling, but he wasn't hiding. Calvert's words painted a picture of a man caught in moral tension, loyal to Israel, yet deeply disturbed by the human cost of war. He explained that Charlie had spent months wrestling with his thoughts, questioning long-held beliefs without ever turning his back on them. Behind the scenes, he shared his frustrations privately, speaking not with anger, but with the ache of someone who cared too deeply. He wasn't hiding, Calvert said. He was thinking, evolving, trying to find a way to be truthful in a world that punishes honesty. Blake Neff. He wanted the Gaza war to end. He didn't want the U.S. taking refugees or sending troops. Neff's tone was firm, almost protective, as if defending a friend's legacy. He recalled how Charlie spoke often about peace, about restraint, about not repeating the mistakes of endless foreign entanglements. He recognized Hamas started the war, Neff added, but he also knew the suffering on both sides was unbearable. Charlie's stance was neither political nor performative, it was human. To him, America's role was not to intervene, but to urge for an end, to the bombs, to the fear, and to the silence. Charlie Kirk, excerpt from the Megyn Kelly podcast. I love Israel. But I feel like I have less freedom to criticize the Israeli government than Israelis themselves. Those words, calm, thoughtful, but charged with frustration, came just weeks before his death. In that moment, Charlie wasn't delivering a political talking point, he was exposing something raw, something deeply personal. He leaned forward in his chair, eyes focused, voice steady but emotional. "Look," he said, "there are so many people in the pro-Israel community who have been kind, generous, and supportive. But lately, I've felt this shift, like the second you question anything, even the smallest policy, suddenly you're labeled an anti-Semite. I have text messages, Megan, people I've known for years, calling me that. And it hurts." For nearly 7 minutes, Charlie spoke not as a commentator, but as a man struggling to balance loyalty with conscience. He made it clear he wasn't turning against Israel. In fact, he reaffirmed his admiration for the nation and its people multiple times. "I've spent years defending Israel," he said. "I believe in its right to exist, its right to defend itself. But what's happening now, the inability to even discuss their government's actions, that's dangerous. Not just for free speech, but for truth itself." Megyn Kelly nodded, listening quietly as Charlie continued. "I've had Israelis tell me they debate their leaders openly, criticize policy, argue about Gaza or Netanyahu, and that's healthy. But here in America, if you even raise a question, you get blacklisted. That's not love, that's control." He sighed and looked off camera for a moment before adding, "It's not that I want to judge or attack anyone. I just want to be honest. Because honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, is the only way to be a true friend." The segment closed with Charlie smiling faintly, almost wistfully. "I'll always love Israel," he said softly, "but loving something doesn't mean never questioning it. Sometimes it means caring enough to tell the truth." Those 7 minutes would later be replayed countless times, dissected, defended, and debated, as supporters and critics alike tried to understand the heart of the man behind the microphone. "I love Israel. But I feel like I have less freedom to criticize the Israeli government than Israelis themselves." When Charlie Kirk said those words during his appearance on the Megyn Kelly show, the tone in the studio shifted. It wasn't anger, it was exhaustion. You could hear it in his voice, the sound of a man who still believed, but who had grown tired of walking on eggshells. He leaned back in his chair, his hands folded, eyes narrowing slightly as he continued, "It's strange, isn't it? Israelis can debate their government, criticize Netanyahu, argue about Gaza openly, and no one calls them traitors. But here, if you so much as question one policy, you're branded anti-Semitic." Megyn Kelly didn't interrupt. She just listened. The pause that followed his words was heavy, the kind that lingers when someone says something that's both true and taboo. Charlie went on, his voice softer now, "I've had friends, donors, people I've worked with for years, text me, saying I'm crossing a line. That hurts. Because I've stood by Israel my whole career. I've defended it when it wasn't popular. But love isn't blind obedience. Love means you care enough to speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable." That moment revealed more than a political stance, it showed the emotional weight of a man trying to reconcile conviction with consequence. He wasn't turning against Israel, he was pleading for the right to think freely about it. Later, those same words, "I feel like I have less freedom to criticize the Israeli government than Israelis themselves," would be replayed on countless platforms, dissected in headlines, and quoted in memorials. For many, it became one of Charlie's most haunting reflections, a glimpse into the quiet conflict he carried long before the world fell silent around him. America was divided, some called him a martyr, others called him reckless. But everyone agreed, he spoke his truth, no matter the cost. Those words echoed across television screens, podcasts, and social media in the days following Charlie Kirk's death. They weren't just a reflection, they were a reckoning. For 12 long minutes, news anchors, friends, and critics alike tried to capture what his voice had meant to a nation already fractured by politics, faith, and fear. In conservative circles, he was mourned as a hero, a man who stood firm when it was easier to stay silent. Supporters gathered at vigils holding candles and banners with his face printed beneath the words, "Truth has a price." They described him as fearless, someone who refused to bend under pressure from donors, lobbyists, or political elites. He never followed the script, one Turning Point USA member said during a broadcast. He was the script. But not everyone saw him that way. On other channels, commentators described Charlie as reckless, a provocateur who played too close to the fire. They questioned whether his outspokenness, especially on issues like Israel, censorship, and political violence, had made him a target or a catalyst. Charlie lived loud, one journalist said. And sometimes, when you live that loud, you shake the wrong walls. Across the political spectrum, though, one sentiment bridged the divide, an uneasy respect for his authenticity. Even those who disagreed with him admitted that he never faked conviction. Every word he spoke, whether at a rally, in a podcast studio, or in private texts, carried a raw, unfiltered edge that could both inspire and infuriate. Clips from his final interviews replayed everywhere. In one, he said quietly, "If truth costs me friends, so be it. If it costs me support, fine. But silence costs more." That line alone became a rallying cry for his followers, a defiant echo of the man they believed refused to be controlled. As tributes poured in, so did debates. Was he a martyr for free speech, or a casualty of his own defiance? Was his death a tragedy born of chaos, or a symbol of what happens when words become weapons? In that 12-minute segment, spanning sorrow, outrage, and reflection, America revealed more about itself than about Charlie. The footage cut between candlelight vigils, heated news panels, and snippets of his speeches. His voice, recorded months earlier, closed the broadcast. Truth isn't about comfort. It's about courage. And as those words faded into silence, the nation, divided, grieving, and uncertain, was left to confront the haunting legacy of a man who refused to stop speaking his truth, even when it cost him everything. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson now faces charges of aggravated murder, firearm discharge, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. Prosecutors have announced they will seek the death penalty. The announcement came during a tense afternoon press briefing, streamed live to millions. Reporters packed the courthouse steps, microphones clustered like a forest of eyes and ears, waiting for answers that still felt unreal. The spokesman's voice was steady, but every word landed like a hammer. Prosecutors have announced they will seek the death penalty. Tyler Robinson, once an ordinary 22-year-old college student from Utah County, had become the central figure in one of the most polarizing murder cases in modern American history. In just a few weeks, his name had transformed from a blurry police sketch to the headline on every screen, every podcast, every late-night debate. Investigators say Robinson fired the fatal shot that ended Charlie Kirk's life during his American Comeback event at Utah Valley University, a single, echoing moment that plunged the amphitheater into chaos and changed the political landscape overnight. Authorities revealed that Robinson was captured after a 33-hour manhunt that spanned multiple counties. Surveillance footage, witness statements, and forensic evidence reportedly tied him to the scene. Yet, even as the charges were listed, aggravated murder, felony firearm discharge, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, the motives remained murky. In the courtroom sketches released later, Robinson sat expressionless, hands cuffed, his eyes fixed downward. Around him, whispers rippled through the crowd, some demanded justice, others whispered conspiracy. The death penalty announcement only intensified the divide. Prosecutors insisted the crime was calculated and deliberate, describing it as an attack not just on a man, but on democracy itself. Defense attorneys, however, painted a different picture, a young man overwhelmed, manipulated, or possibly caught in something far bigger than anyone yet understood. As the news spread, protests erupted outside the courthouse. Supporters of Kirk held signs reading, "Justice for Charlie," while others pleaded, "No death penalty, find the truth first." Every major network carried the story for hours, panelists dissecting the case, legal experts debating strategy, commentators questioning what had really happened that day. Was Tyler Robinson acting alone? Was it ideological? Political? Personal? The truth, like everything surrounding Charlie Kirk's final moments, remained elusive. But one thing was clear, This case would not only decide the fate of one young man, it would test the conscience of a nation already divided between justice and vengeance. Charlie Kirk is gone, but his voice still echoes across a nation searching for answers. Was it politics, ideology, or something deeper? The truth may still be out there. The final lines play over slow, haunting piano music, the kind that carries both sorrow and tension. The camera pans across empty stages where Charlie once spoke, now silent except for the rustle of flags in the wind. His words, once fiery and full of conviction, replay in fragments through news clips, podcasts, and phone recordings, reminders of a voice that refused to fade. Across the country, people still argue about what really happened. Was it political rage? A calculated act of silencing? Or something even deeper, something hidden beneath layers of influence, loyalty, and fear? Each theory breeds another. Each new revelation only blurs the truth further. In his absence, his movement continues, fractured, uncertain, but alive. Supporters call him a martyr for free speech. Critics say he was consumed by the forces he helped ignite. Yet somewhere in between lies a story no one fully understands, a story that may still hold the answers to what really happened that September afternoon in Utah. A single spotlight fades over an empty podium, his last stage. The camera lingers, the silence stretching into something almost sacred. Then, the narrator's voice returns, quiet but resolute. Charlie Kirk is gone, but his voice still echoes across a nation searching for answers. Was it politics, ideology, or something deeper? The truth may still be out there. And as the screen fades to black, only his words remain, echoing like a challenge to those still listening, seek the truth.